I'm Hudson, 33 years old, from Boston. My brother Kevin and I were inseparable growing up. I built a successful tech company while he chased his photography dreams. When he got engaged, I happily offered to help with wedding costs. What started as $15,000 somehow ballooned to over $30,000. Then came the text that shattered everything. "Sorry, we're at capacity. You can watch online." My own brother's wedding that I paid for. Before I dive into how my own brother stabbed me in the back, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if family betrayal has ever left you speechless. Kevin is 5 years younger than me. We grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Massachusetts where our dad worked as an insurance agent and mom was an elementary school teacher. Life was pretty normal until I turned 15 and Kevin was 10. That's when our parents dropped the bomb that they were getting divorced. I still remember the night they told us. Mom and Dad sat us down in the living room after dinner. The air felt heavy, like right before a thunderstorm. Kevin was building a Lego spaceship on the carpet, completely oblivious to what was coming. When they finally said the words, Kevin's hands froze mid-air, that little red brick suspended between his fingers and the half-built spacecraft. I watched his face crumble, and something inside me changed forever. In that moment, I silently promised myself I would always protect my little brother. The divorce was messy. Dad moved out, then came the custody battles, the arguing over phone calls, the tense exchanges during drop-offs and pickups. Mom tried her best, but she was devastated too. I stepped up, making sure Kevin had breakfast before school, helping him with homework, and most importantly, being the emotional support he needed. Kevin and I couldn't have been more different personality-wise. I was always practical, organized, planning 10 steps ahead. Even as a teenager, I was saving money from my summer jobs, researching colleges with good business programs, setting goals. Kevin was the creative one. He could lose himself for hours with his sketchbook or later his camera. He saw beauty in things most people overlooked. Where I saw a crumbling, abandoned building, Kevin saw texture, history, and stories. I admired that about him. When I graduated high school, I got a partial scholarship to a state university, but still needed to cover living expenses. I worked 2 jobs during college, one at the campus bookstore during the day, and waiting tables at night. It was exhausting, but I was determined to build a future for myself. Despite my busy schedule, I made time for Kevin. Every Sunday I'd drive home to have dinner with him and Mom, and those car rides back and forth became our special time. Kevin would tell me about his photography projects, the girls he liked, the teachers who were giving him a hard time. I was more than a brother, I was his confidant. During my junior year of college, Kevin started talking about art school. He had genuine talent, but art school is expensive, and Mom was already stretched thin financially. Dad had remarried and had a new family by then, sending child support but not much else. When Kevin got accepted to his dream photography program, I didn't hesitate. I increased my work hours, took out additional loans, and contributed $3,000 each semester toward his tuition. "Why are you doing this?" Kevin asked me once when I handed him a check for books and supplies. "Because you're my brother," I said simply, "and because you'd do the same for me." After college, while Kevin was still in art school, I started my tech company. The first 2 years were brutal. 16-hour days, ramen noodle dinners, sleeping on a futon in my tiny office to save on rent. But gradually, things took off. We developed a specialized security software that caught the attention of some major clients. By the time I was 28, I had 20 employees and had just purchased my first home. As my financial situation improved, I made sure Kevin benefited too. I took him on a trip to Iceland when he expressed interest in photographing the northern lights. I bought him professional camera equipment for his birthday. When he needed a reliable car, I helped with the down payment. It wasn't about the money. It was about supporting his dreams the way I wished someone had supported mine during those tough early years. Kevin graduated from art school with a portfolio of stunning work, but struggled to find steady employment. The reality of making a living as a photographer hit him hard. He picked up freelance gigs and worked part-time at a camera shop, but there were months when he couldn't make rent. I was always there to help, no questions asked. "You'll get on your feet," I'd tell him. "Your work is amazing. It just takes time for people to recognize talent." Then Kevin met Jessica at a gallery opening where some of his photos were being displayed. She was attractive, confident, and seemed genuinely interested in his work. According to Kevin, she came from a wealthy family and worked in marketing for a luxury hotel chain. On paper, she sounded perfect. The first time I met Jessica was at a dinner Kevin arranged at an upscale restaurant way beyond his budget. I remember thinking it was odd that he'd chosen such an expensive place when he'd asked me for rent money just 2 weeks earlier. Jessica was charming enough, complimenting my business success and asking thoughtful questions about Kevin's childhood. But something felt off. The way she controlled the conversation subtly corrected Kevin's table manners ordered for both of them without consulting him. Tiny red flags that I brushed aside because Kevin seemed happy. "She's really something," I told Kevin when he called the next day to ask what I thought. "Isn't she great? I've never met anyone like her," he gushed. "She believes in my work, Hudson. She thinks I could be really successful." Over the next year, I watched their relationship develop. Jessica always had ideas about how Kevin could improve himself. New clothes, different haircut, better apartment, and Kevin soaked it all up, desperate to be the man she thought he could be. I bit my tongue because who was I to judge Kevin was an adult? But I couldn't ignore how he began canceling our regular hangouts, how his calls became less frequent, how he seemed to adopt Jessica's opinions as his own. "Kevin and I have decided that commercial photography is beneath his talents," Jessica announced during one dinner at their apartment. Kevin nodded along, though just months earlier he'd been excited about potentially shooting product photos for a local business. Despite these concerns, I was genuinely happy when Kevin called me, voice bubbling with excitement, to share that he had proposed to Jessica, and she'd said yes. My brother was going to get married, and I was determined to support him even if I had reservations about his choice of partner. "I'm really happy for you, Kev," I said, meaning it, because ultimately all I've ever wanted is for my little brother to be happy. Kevin and Jessica got engaged after dating for 2 years. Kevin called me on a Tuesday night, his voice practically vibrating with excitement. "She said yes, Hudson. I asked Jessica to marry me, and she said yes." I felt a genuine surge of happiness for him. Despite my reservations about Jessica, my brother was clearly in love. "That's amazing, Kev. Congratulations. How did you do it?" He launched into the story about a sunset proposal at a vineyard, complete with a photographer hiding in the bushes to capture the moment. It sounded beautiful and thoughtfully planned. It also sounded expensive for someone who had been struggling financially. "The ring is gorgeous," Kevin continued. 4 carats princess cut. Jessica has always been specific about what she wanted. A 4-carat diamond. My stomach tightened. A ring like that would cost well over $20,000. "That's quite a ring," I said carefully. "How did you manage that?" There was a slight pause. "Well, I put it on credit cards. Multiple cards, actually. I know it sounds crazy, but Jessica deserves the best, and her family has certain expectations. I wanted to lecture him about debt and financial responsibility, but this wasn't the moment. This was a celebration, and I didn't want to dampen his joy. We're having a dinner next weekend with Jessica's parents," Kevin continued. "I'd love for you to come. They're excited to meet my successful big brother." The dinner with Jessica's family was at their sprawling home in an exclusive suburb. Mr. and Mrs. Lawrence greeted me with practiced smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. Their house was immaculate, filled with expensive art and furniture that looked like it had never been sat on. Despite Jessica's tales of family wealth, there was something performative about their affluence. "So you're in tech," Mr. Lawrence said over appetizers, swirling his scotch. "Fascinating field. Volatile, though, isn't it? Here today, gone tomorrow." "Some sectors can be unpredictable," I replied diplomatically. "But security software tends to have staying power. Everyone needs protection." Mrs. Lawrence directed the conversation to the engagement. "Jessica has always dreamed of a June wedding. The Fairview Country Club has a 2-year waiting list, but the membership director is a dear friend." Jessica beamed. "We're thinking 150 guests, garden ceremony, 5-course dinner. Very elegant but not ostentatious." Kevin nodded along, but I caught the flicker of anxiety in his eyes. The engagement ring debt was clearly just the beginning. After dinner, Jessica and her mother disappeared to discuss wedding magazines, leaving Kevin, Mr. Lawrence, and me with after-dinner drinks. "Now, about the wedding," Mr. Lawrence said abruptly. Traditionally, the bride's family handles these things, but we're in a bit of a cash flow situation with our property investments. Nothing serious, just temporarily illiquid. His $10,000 watch glinted under the chandelier as he reached for his drink. We can contribute $20,000 toward the wedding, he continued, but Jessica has expensive taste. Always has. Kevin mentioned you've done well for yourself. I felt ambushed. This was clearly a rehearsed conversation. I'm happy to help Kevin however I can, I said carefully. What kind of budget are we looking at total? Mr. Lawrence mentioned a figure that made my eyes widen. Kevin stared at his shoes. Later that night, Kevin called me from his car. I'm sorry about that, he said, voice tight with embarrassment. I had no idea her dad was going to put you on the spot like that. It's okay, Kev, but we need to be realistic about what this wedding is going to cost. Have you and Jessica discussed a budget? His sigh was heavy. She says we can do it for around $50,000. Her parents will put in $20,000. I've saved about $5,000, which leaves $25,000 I finished for him. That's a lot of money, Kevin. I know. And I would never ask, but her family has these expectations and I don't want to disappoint her. This is her dream wedding. I thought about all the times Kevin had been there for me before I found success. How he believed in my business when everyone else thought I was crazy to quit my stable job. How he helped me move into my first office assembling furniture until 3 a.m. I'll take care of it, I heard myself say. This is your big day. Let's budget $15,000 from me to start and we'll see where we are as plans develop. Kevin's relief was palpable. You're the best brother anyone could ask for. I swear I'll pay you back someday. We started with reasonable wedding plans. Jessica found a charming boutique hotel with a rooftop garden for the ceremony and reception. The initial quote came in at $38,000 for 100 guests, including food, drinks, basic decor, and photography. See, under budget, Kevin said proudly when he showed me the proposal. But then the changes began. Jessica decided the hotel wasn't prestigious enough. The photographer wasn't renowned enough. The florist couldn't provide the exotic blooms she envisioned. With each change, the budget expanded. The Fairview Country Club had a cancellation, Jessica announced during a planning lunch, her eyes sparkling. We can get the grand ballroom for June 25th. That's wonderful, Kevin said, squeezing her hand. But what about the deposit we put down at the hotel? Jessica waved dismissively. We'll lose it, but this is so much better. The Fairview is where all the best weddings happen. I watched my brother's face, seeing his conflicted expression. He wanted to make Jessica happy, but he also knew what this change would mean financially. How much more are we talking? I asked directly. Jessica's smile tightened, just slightly. About $12,000 more for the venue. But it includes so much more, and the prestige factor alone. So we're now at $50,000 total, I clarified. Around that, she admitted. But we can trim other areas. Those other areas never seemed to get trimmed. Instead, more expenses piled on. Custom invitations with wax seals and hand calligraphy, a designer wedding dress from New York, a 10-piece band instead of a DJ. The $15,000 I had initially committed gradually increased to $20,000, then $25,000, and finally $30,000. Meanwhile, I noticed Jessica subtly isolating Kevin from his friends and even some family members. His college roommate Marcus, once a fixture at our family gatherings, was suddenly a bad influence. Kevin's cousins on our mom's side were too provincial for the wedding guest list. Kevin's weekly photography meetup was dismissed as amateur hour. Don't you think you're letting Jessica make all the decisions? I asked Kevin during a rare moment alone after he mentioned that his best friend since childhood might not make the final guest list. She knows what she's doing, Kevin defended. Her family moves in these social circles. This wedding is important for our future. Your future? As what, a society photographer? Kevin's face hardened. You don't get it, Hudson. Jessica believes in me. She's introducing me to people who can actually advance my career. The distance between us grew. Kevin started making excuses to cancel our regular brother dinners. When I invited him to my company's anniversary party, he texted an hour before to say Jessica wasn't feeling well. Yet I saw posts on social media of them at a gallery opening that same night. Jessica's attitude toward me shifted too. Gone was the charming woman who had seemed so interested in my business and my relationship with Kevin. In her place was someone increasingly cold and dismissive. At a cake tasting I was invited to, she barely acknowledged my presence, speaking primarily to the baker and occasionally to Kevin. I thought the lemon cake was nice, I offered at one point. Jessica smiled thinly. We're looking for sophisticated flavors, not something from a children's birthday party. The tension reached a breaking point when the final venue payment came due, $12,000 to secure the Fairview Country Club. By this point I had already contributed $18,000 toward various deposits and vendors. This final payment would bring my total to $30,000, twice what I had initially agreed to. I know it's a lot, Kevin said apologetically when he called to remind me about the payment deadline. But everything's set now. No more changes or additions. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to support his happiness. So I agreed to make the final payment scheduled for the week before the wedding. What I didn't know then was that while I was opening my wallet, Jessica was closing the door on my invitation. Over the 6 months of wedding planning, Kevin's behavior changed dramatically. The brother who once called me almost daily now took days to respond to texts. Our Sunday tradition of watching football games together disappeared entirely. I made repeated attempts to maintain our connection, inviting him for dinners, offering to help with wedding tasks, suggesting we grab a beer just to catch up. Sorry, busy with wedding stuff became his standard response, delivered via brief text messages, hours or sometimes days after I reached out. My 33rd birthday fell 3 months before the wedding. In previous years, Kevin had always made a big deal of my birthday, planning surprises or at minimum spending the day with me. This year I received only a text message at 9 p.m. Happy birthday, bro. Hope it was a good one. When I called him, the conversation was strained. I was hoping to see you today, I said, trying to keep disappointment from my voice. Yeah, sorry about that. Jessica's parents invited us to their country club for dinner. Couldn't really say no. On my birthday. You couldn't say no on my birthday. Kevin sighed. Don't make this a thing, Hudson. It's just a birthday. We'll celebrate another time. That promised celebration never materialized. At the few family gatherings where I did see Kevin and Jessica together, her controlling behavior was impossible to ignore. She would answer questions directed at Kevin. She would place a hand on his arm when she disagreed with something he was saying, a subtle signal that would immediately make him change course. She controlled what he ate, reminding him he was watching his carbs when he reached for bread. She even selected his clothes, once making him change his tie in the car because it sent the wrong message. Our mother noticed too. Kevin seems different, she commented after an uncomfortable Sunday lunch where Jessica had dominated the conversation and repeatedly interrupted Kevin, almost like he's afraid to speak freely. I've noticed the same thing, I admitted. During that lunch I overheard a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. I had stepped outside to take a business call and was returning through the patio doors when Jessica's voice, sharp and cutting, reached me. Your brother thinks he's so important just because he has money. It's new money though, isn't it? No class, no taste. The way he dresses, the way he talks about his business constantly. It's embarrassing. I froze out of sight but within earshot. Hudson's not like that, Kevin defended weakly. He's just proud of what he's built. Well, he shouldn't be giving advice about our wedding. He's never even been married. Probably never will be with that personality. I quietly backed away, then made a noisy approach so they would hear me coming. The fake smile Jessica gave me when I rejoined them made my stomach turn. Later that week I invited Kevin for lunch, determined to address the growing distance between us. I miss you, man, I said simply when we were seated. It feels like you're disappearing from my life. Kevin looked genuinely pained. I'm just busy with the wedding and trying to build my photography business. Jessica's helping me with contacts. Is she? Because it seems like she's isolating you from everyone who cares about you. Your friends, our family, me. His expression hardened. That's not fair. Jessica wants what's best for me. Does she? Or does she want to control you? You're being ridiculous, he snapped. Jessica loves me. She believes in my potential. The Kevin I know didn't need someone to tell him his worth. He stood up abruptly. Maybe you don't know me as well as you think. Maybe Jessica sees something in me that you don't. He left before our food arrived, leaving me sitting alone with 2 plates and a sinking feeling that I was losing my brother. My girlfriend Sophia, who had met Kevin and Jessica several times, expressed her concerns openly. "There's something off about their relationship," she said one night as we discussed the situation. "Jessica doesn't treat Kevin like a partner. She treats him like a project." "I see it too," I admitted. "But what can I do? He's a grown man making his own choices." Maybe Sophia suggested gently, "You need to stop financing those choices. You're enabling this situation." I considered her advice, but couldn't bring myself to pull financial support so close to the wedding. It would devastate Kevin and potentially damage our relationship beyond repair. I still hoped that after the wedding things would normalize. As the big day approached, I attempted to stay involved in the planning, if only to maintain some connection with my brother. Jessica's parents hosted a dinner to discuss final arrangements. I arrived to find Jessica's extended family well represented along with her parents' friends, but was the only person from Kevin's side. Throughout dinner, Jessica's father treated me with thinly veiled contempt, despite the fact that I was contributing significantly more to the wedding than he was. When I offered an opinion about the timing of the ceremony, he cut me off. "We've already decided that 4 o'clock is ideal. The light will be perfect for photographs." Jessica's mother added, "The Fairview has decades of experience with society weddings. They know exactly how these things should be done." Every suggestion I made was dismissed. Every question I asked was treated as an imposition. Yet when the conversation turned to the final venue payment, all eyes turned expectantly to me. "You'll have the check ready by next Friday," Jessica's father confirmed. "The venue requires payment in full 7 days before the event." "I said I would handle it," I replied, struggling to keep frustration from my voice. "I've never let Kevin down." Jessica smiled thinly. "We're counting on that." Kevin remained mostly silent throughout the dinner, speaking only when directly addressed. Several times I caught him looking at me apologetically, but he never once defended me or acknowledged my contributions. On the drive home, I called my mother. "Have you received your invitation to the wedding yet?" I asked. "Yes, it came last week. Beautiful envelope, very fancy. Haven't you gotten yours?" A small alarm bell rang in my head. "Not yet. I'm sure it's coming." But as another week passed with no invitation, that alarm bell grew louder. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe they assumed I didn't need a formal invitation since I was so involved in the planning. Maybe mine was being hand-delivered for some reason. Maybe there was a mail issue. I texted Kevin, "Hey, haven't received my wedding invitation yet. Should I be concerned?" Hours later he responded, "Jessica's handling the guest list stuff. I'm sure it's fine." His vague response did nothing to ease my growing unease. The final venue payment deadline was approaching, and I was beginning to question everything about this situation. "Something's not right," I told Sophia. "Why wouldn't I have received an invitation by now? I'm his brother and I'm paying for 1/3 of this wedding." "Call him directly," Sophia advised. "Don't let him hide behind texts." I tried, but Kevin didn't answer my calls. The wall between us had never felt so impenetrable. The week before the wedding arrived and I still hadn't received an invitation. I had nearly convinced myself it was some sort of oversight when I got a text from Blake, my college roommate, who had also been close with Kevin. "Looking forward to seeing you at Kevin's wedding on Saturday. It's been too long, man." My heart sank. I called Blake immediately. "When did you get your invitation?" I asked, without preamble. "About a month ago," Blake replied, confusion in his voice. "Haven't you gotten yours? You're the best man, right?" I wasn't the best man. Kevin hadn't even asked me to be in the wedding party. The realization hit me like a physical blow. "Yeah, must have been lost in the mail," I lied. "See you there." I hung up and immediately texted Kevin. "We need to talk about the wedding. Now." His response came hours later. "Super busy with last-minute stuff. Can it wait?" "No, it can't. Why has everyone received invitations except me?" This time the delay was even longer. Finally, around midnight, my phone buzzed. "About that. We had to make some tough decisions on the final guest list. The venue has strict capacity limits. Jessica thought since you've been involved in the planning you'd understand. You can watch the live stream, though." I stared at the message in disbelief. My own brother was uninviting me from his wedding, a wedding I had contributed $30,000 toward. I felt sick. Before I could respond, another text came through, this one from Jessica. Kevin's having a hard time explaining this, so I'll be direct. The final guest list is at capacity with family who are traveling internationally and important industry contacts for Kevin's career. Unfortunately, we couldn't make space for local family who we see regularly. We'll be setting up a nice live stream, and we can celebrate when we return from our honeymoon. We still need the final venue payment by tomorrow. The routing number is the same as before. The audacity left me speechless. Not only was I being excluded from the wedding, but I was still expected to pay for it, and the justification was insulting. Local family who we see regularly, I had barely seen Kevin in months. I couldn't sleep that night. I paced my apartment, alternating between rage and heartbreak. Around 2 a.m. I texted Blake again. "This is going to sound strange, but could you send me a picture of your invitation?" He responded quickly despite the hour. "Sure, here you go." The invitation was elaborate with gold foil lettering and a wax seal. But what caught my eye was the line indicating the ceremony would be followed by dinner and dancing for 180 guests. 180 guests. Well above the capacity Jessica had claimed was the issue. I wasn't done investigating. The next morning I called Marcus, Kevin's childhood best friend. "Are you going to Kevin's wedding?" I asked. "No," Marcus replied, a note of hurt in his voice. "I didn't get invited. Jessica told Kevin I'm a negative influence or something. Can you believe that? After 20 years of friendship." So it wasn't just me. Jessica had systematically eliminated people who had been important to Kevin, people who might question her influence over him. Later that day, I received another blow. A mutual friend who was attending the wedding sent me a photo of the seating chart he'd seen at the rehearsal dinner. Jessica's extended family occupied multiple tables. Even distant cousins she barely knew had seats. There were tables for her parents' business associates, for her college sorority sisters, for people Kevin had never even met. But there was no place for me. No place for the brother who had helped raise him. No place for the person who had contributed $30,000 to make this day possible. The final straw came that evening. A text from Jessica. "Just following up on the final venue payment. The Fairview needs to receive it by noon tomorrow, or we risk losing the reservation. It would be such a shame after all this planning." No acknowledgement of the situation. No appreciation for what I'd already contributed. Just a demand for more money. Kevin texted an hour later. "Sorry, bro, it's complicated. Jessica thinks it's best this way. I'll make it up to you." I sat in my darkened living room, phone in hand, a storm of emotions washing over me. Betrayal, anger, grief. The brother I thought I knew would never treat me this way. The Kevin the First had protected and supported would never exclude me from one of the most important days of his life. Sophia found me there, still sitting in the dark, when she came over later. "They don't want me at the wedding," I told her, my voice hollow. "But they still want my money." She sat beside me, taking my hand in hers. "What are you going to do?" I thought about all the sacrifices I had made for Kevin over the years. The extra jobs I took to help with his tuition. The countless times I had put his needs before my own. The $30,000 I had already spent on a wedding I wasn't welcome to attend. "I'm not going to be used like this," I said finally. Not even by my own brother. That night I made a decision that would change everything. The next morning I drove to the Fairview Country Club. I needed to see this venue that was apparently worth sacrificing our relationship for. It was as opulent as I expected, with manicured gardens, marble columns, and a grand ballroom that could easily accommodate 200 guests. I asked to speak with the events manager, a professional woman named Rachel, who had clearly handled her share of wedding drama. "I'm Hudson, Kevin Miller's brother," I introduced myself. "I've been funding much of his wedding to Jessica Lawrence." Rachel consulted her computer. "Yes, we have a $12,000 balance due today for the Miller-Lawrence wedding." "I was supposed to make that payment," I explained. "But there's been a change of plans. I won't be attending the wedding because I wasn't invited. Given that I've already contributed significantly to other aspects of the wedding, I won't be making this final payment." Rachel's expression shifted from professional politeness to genuine sympathy. "You're paying for a wedding you're not invited to." "Apparently so. I've already contributed $18,000 to various vendors. This venue payment would bring my total to $30,000. She shook her head. I've been in this business 15 years and thought I'd seen everything. Is there anything that can be done at this point? I asked. Legally, I mean. I was never under contract with the venue. That's between you and the couple. Rachel nodded thoughtfully. The contract is with Mr. Miller and Miss Lawrence. If the final payment isn't received by noon today, we have the right to cancel the reservation and retain the deposit as a cancellation fee. As we discussed the situation further, Rachel revealed something that only confirmed my decision. Between us, she said, lowering her voice, Miss Lawrence has been one of our more challenging clients. She's made numerous demands outside our contract, berated our staff, and changed major details multiple times after deadlines. Several of our vendors have threatened to walk away despite cancellation penalties. This matched the Jessica I had come to know, someone who viewed service providers as beneath her, who believed rules didn't apply to her, who expected everyone to bend to her will. Thank you for your time, I said, standing to leave. I won't be making the payment. The reservation will be automatically canceled at 12:01, Rachel confirmed. I'm sorry about your situation. Family weddings can bring out the worst in people sometimes. On the drive home, I crafted a simple text to Kevin. I won't be making the final venue payment. Find another way to pay, or find another venue. This is what happens when you exclude the person financing your wedding. Within minutes, my phone exploded with notifications. First came a series of increasingly frantic texts from Jessica. There must be some mistake. The venue needs payment. Today. This is not the time for games, Hudson. Do you realize what you're doing? My entire family is flying in for this wedding. Then her parents joined in. This is completely unprofessional behavior. We will take legal action if necessary. You are ruining our daughter's special day out of petty jealousy. I silenced my phone and waited for the one call that actually mattered. It came shortly after noon. What the hell are you doing? Kevin's voice was a mixture of panic and rage. Exactly what I said I would do. I'm not paying for a wedding I'm not welcome to attend. You can't do this, Hudson. The wedding is in 3 days. Jessica is hysterical. I'm not the one who created this situation, Kevin. You and Jessica made it clear I'm not important enough to witness your marriage despite financing a third of it. Actions have consequences. It wasn't my decision, Kevin shouted. Jessica and her mom handled the guest list. They said we had to cut it down. And yet her second cousin from Finland made the cut. Her dad's golf buddies made the cut. But your brother didn't. There was a pause before Kevin spoke again, his voice smaller. What am I supposed to do now? You have options. Jessica's parents could cover the balance. They certainly appear to have the money. You could find a less expensive venue with 3 days' notice. Or you could admit to your guests that you prioritized Jessica's distant relatives over your own brother who was paying for everything. You're enjoying this, aren't you, Kevin accused? You've always been jealous of what Jessica and I have. The unfairness of this statement took my breath away. What you have is a relationship where she isolates you from everyone who cares about you and treats your family like ATMs. But sure, I'm jealous. This is unforgivable, Kevin said flatly. If you don't make this payment, we're done. We were already done when you decided I didn't deserve an invitation. I was just too slow to realize it. I hung up feeling simultaneously terrible and relieved. The confrontation I had been avoiding for months was finally happening, even if it wasn't on my terms. Over the next few hours, the situation exploded beyond our immediate circle. Jessica's parents called our mother, who then called me in tears. How could you do this to your brother? She demanded. Did Kevin tell you I wasn't invited to the wedding? I countered. There was a pause. What are you talking about? I explained everything, the increasing wedding costs, the growing distance, the deliberate exclusion. Mom's tone changed immediately. That can't be right. There must be some misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, Mom. Kevin confirmed it himself. Jessica and her family decided I wasn't important enough to include, but my money still was. Other family members began calling too as news spread. Opinions were divided. Some thought I was being petty and should just pay for the venue regardless of the invitation situation. Others were outraged on my behalf, especially when they learned about the full financial commitment I had already made. By that evening, Jessica had taken to social media, posting a carefully crafted version of events. Heartbroken to announce our wedding is in jeopardy because a family member who promised financial support has vindictively withdrawn it at the last minute. True colors always show eventually. Her post garnered hundreds of sympathetic comments. People who didn't know the full story were quick to condemn me as the villain. Even some family members who should have known better were taken in by her narrative. Kevin remained notably silent on social media, but the text messages from him continued, alternating between anger, bargaining, and guilt trips. "I can't believe you would sabotage my wedding. What will it take to fix this? Name your price. Mom is devastated. Is that what you wanted?" I finally turned my phone off completely. Sophia stayed with me that night, a silent support as I processed the magnitude of what had happened. "You did the right thing," she assured me. "It wasn't about the money. It was about respect." "I know," I said. "But it still feels like I've lost my brother." "The brother you thought you had wouldn't have put you in this position," she pointed out gently. She was right, of course. The Kevin I had protected and supported all these years would never have treated me this way. Either he had changed fundamentally, or perhaps I had never truly known him. The next day I learned through family members that the wedding venue was officially canceled. Jessica's parents had refused to cover the cost, claiming financial limitations despite their obvious wealth. Kevin was frantically calling other venues, trying to find a last-minute alternative, but the upscale options Jessica deemed acceptable were all booked months in advance. For my own mental health, I blocked Kevin and Jessica on my phone and social media. The constant barrage of accusations and guilt trips was taking a toll, and I needed space to process my feelings. I didn't block Jessica's parents or other family members, though perhaps I should have. The messages from them were equally toxic, painting me as the villain who had single-handedly ruined a young couple's special day out of spite. What none of them seemed to understand was that this had never been about the money itself. It was about being used and discarded. It was about my brother allowing his fiancée to treat me with such blatant disrespect after years of support and sacrifice. As the original wedding date approached, rumors circulated through family channels. The ceremony was being moved to Jessica's parents' country club. No, it was being held in their backyard. No, it was postponed indefinitely. The uncertainty only added to the drama, with blame consistently directed my way. I tried to focus on work, on my relationship with Sophia, on anything but the wedding situation. But the sense of loss was pervasive. Despite everything, Kevin was still my brother. I had spent my life looking out for him, and now we weren't speaking at all. 2 days before what would have been the wedding day, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and part of me feared it might be Jessica or her parents coming to confront me in person. What I never expected was to find Kevin standing there alone, looking like he hadn't slept in days. When I opened my door and saw Kevin standing there, I almost didn't recognize him. My usually well-groomed brother looked disheveled, with dark circles under his eyes and a defeated slump to his shoulders. He was alone, which surprised me. I had half expected Jessica to be with him, ready to launch into another tirade about my betrayal. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice hoarse. I hesitated, then stepped aside. Kevin entered my apartment slowly, like a man walking to his own execution. He stood awkwardly in my living room, looking around as if he'd never been there before, though he'd visited countless times in the past. "You want something to drink?" I offered, more out of habit than hospitality. He shook his head. "I don't deserve your hospitality." This was not what I had expected. I had prepared for anger, for accusations, maybe even for begging me to reconsider the venue payment. I hadn't prepared for whatever this was. "Just say what you came to say, Kevin." He sank onto my couch, running his hands through his unkempt hair. "The wedding's off. Not just the venue, the whole thing." I sat down across from him, maintaining my emotional distance, despite the bomb he'd just dropped. Jessica found a better offer. The comment was cutting, and I regretted it immediately when I saw the flash of pain cross Kevin's face. "I called it off," he said quietly. "After everything blew up with the venue, things got ugly, really ugly." Jessica was furious. "Her parents were threatening to sue you." Everyone was blaming everyone else. And in the middle of all that chaos, something just clicked for me. He looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed. "You were right about her, about all of it, and I've been so blind." I didn't respond. Part of me was still too hurt, too angry to offer easy forgiveness. Another part was wary that this might be manipulation, a new angle to get what they wanted. When the venue canceled, Jessica completely lost it, Kevin continued. She wasn't sad about not getting married. She was enraged about losing the perfect backdrop for her perfect day. She kept saying her friends would judge her. Her family would be embarrassed. He swallowed hard. When I suggested we could have a smaller ceremony somewhere else, just focus on us getting married rather than all the trappings, she looked at me like I was insane. That's when I started to see clearly for the first time in 2 years. "What exactly did you see?" I asked cautiously. "That she never loved me, Kevin," said his voice breaking. "She loved the idea of molding me into what she wanted. She loved having a photographer husband who could document her perfect life for social media. She loved the story of finding a diamond in the rough and polishing him up." He wiped at his eyes angrily. "And when I started asking questions about the guest list, about why you weren't invited, Jessica finally told me the truth. She said she'd never intended to invite you. That excluding you was the plan from the beginning." My stomach clenched. Why would she do that? "Because you were the only person who saw through her," Kevin said simply. "She knew you had doubts about her, about us, and she couldn't control you with flattery or manipulation like she did with me. You were a threat to her narrative. So she took my money, but excluded me from the guest list." I summarized, the hurt still raw. "And you went along with it." Kevin hung his head. "I tried to push back at first, but she always had a reason. The venue capacity, the need to invite her family's business connections for my career, the desire for a balanced guest list. I knew it was wrong, Hudson. I was afraid of losing her. So instead you lost me." "Yes." The simple admission hung in the air between us, and I didn't even realize what I was giving up until it was too late. Kevin went on to explain the aftermath of the venue cancellation. When alternative venues proved too expensive or unavailable, Jessica had demanded they use my parents' modest backyard, a location she had previously dismissed as too provincial. When Kevin's suggestion of postponing the wedding was met with fury rather than understanding, he began to question everything. The final straw was finding out she'd been lying to both families, Kevin revealed. "She told her parents I was insisting on an expensive wedding to impress your tech industry connections. She told our mom that your control issues were creating tension. She had all these different narratives going, playing everyone against each other." I shook my head in disbelief. Classic manipulation tactic. Divide and conquer. When I finally confronted her about the lies, about excluding you, about everything, she showed her true self. Kevin looked physically ill at the memory. The things she said about you, about Mom, even about my dad. The contempt in her voice. It was like a mask falling away. He pulled out his phone, hesitated, then handed it to me. "She's been sending these since I told her the wedding was off." I scrolled through dozens of texts, each more vicious than the last. Threats, insults, emotional blackmail. The Jessica revealed in these messages was unrecognizable from the polished, charming woman who had first entered our lives. "She's threatening to tell everyone I abused her," Kevin said hollowly. "To ruin my photography career before it even starts. To make sure no one in her social circle ever hires me." I handed the phone back, a wave of protective anger washing over me. "She can't do that. We have evidence of her threats." "I know. I've saved everything." Kevin's shoulders slumped again. "But that's not even what I'm most worried about. I'm worried about what this has done to us, to you and me." And there it was. The real reason for his visit. Not the venue, not the money, not even Jessica's threats. He was here because of our fractured relationship. "You know what hurt the most," I said after a long moment. "Not the money, not even being excluded from the wedding. It was that you chose her over me, over and over again." "I know," Kevin whispered, "and I'll regret that for the rest of my life." "What about her parents' threats to sue me?" Kevin shook his head. "Empty threats. They know they don't have a case. The venue contract was between me and Jessica and the Fairview. You were never legally obligated to make that payment." We sat in silence for a while, the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on us. Finally, I asked the question that had been nagging at me. "What do you want from me now, Kevin?" He looked up, his expression raw and vulnerable. "Nothing. I don't deserve anything from you. I just came to tell you that you were right to apologize, and to let you know that I ended things with Jessica. I'm staying at Mom's for now. And the money I already spent on the wedding, I'm going to pay you back. Every cent. It'll take time, but I swear I'll do it." I studied my brother, the person I'd protected and supported since we were children. He looked broken, humbled in a way I'd never seen before. Part of me wanted to hold on to my anger, to make him earn forgiveness through years of amends. But another part recognized the courage it took for him to come here to admit he was wrong, to face me after everything that had happened. "I missed my brother," I said finally. Kevin's eyes filled with tears. "I missed you too. More than I even realized until everything fell apart. It wasn't instant forgiveness. It wasn't an immediate return to our former closeness. But it was a beginning, a crack in the wall that had formed between us." Over the next few days, the fallout from the canceled wedding rippled through our family and social circles. Jessica launched a smear campaign on social media, painting herself as the victim of a cruel betrayal. But her narrative quickly fell apart when Kevin respectfully but firmly shared his side of the story, including screenshots of her threatening messages. Jessica's parents, embarrassed by their daughter's exposed behavior and fearful of social backlash, quickly retreated from their legal threats. They offered to reimburse some of the wedding expenses in exchange for discretion, an offer Kevin accepted primarily to bring the matter to a close. I helped Kevin deal with the various vendors, explaining the situation and negotiating cancellation fees. Some were understanding, especially those who had witnessed Jessica's difficult behavior firsthand. Others required partial payment for services contracted. All told, we managed to recover about 40% of the money already spent. Most family members who had initially blamed me for the wedding debacle apologized once they learned the full story. Some remained distant, uncomfortable with the messy reality of what had happened. But those who mattered most understood and supported both Kevin and me through the aftermath. Kevin moved out of the apartment he had shared with Jessica, leaving behind the furniture and decor she had insisted they buy. He took only his photography equipment, his clothes, and a few personal items. It was a physical unburdening that matched his emotional one. "I don't even recognize the person I was with her," he confessed during one of our talks. "It's like I was under some kind of spell." "That's how manipulation works," I explained. "It's gradual. You don't realize how much you've changed until you're unrecognizable even to yourself." As the weeks passed, I watched my brother slowly reclaim himself. He reconnected with friends Jessica had deemed unsuitable. He resumed the photography style he truly loved, rather than the commercial work she had pushed him toward. He started therapy to understand why he had been vulnerable to such manipulation and how to prevent it in the future. And most importantly, he began rebuilding his relationship with me, not with grand gestures or dramatic apologies, but with small, consistent actions, regular check-ins, honest conversations, showing up when he said he would, listening to my perspective without becoming defensive. 1 month after what would have been his wedding day, our entire family gathered for dinner at our mother's house. It was the first time we had all been together since the wedding drama, and there was an initial awkwardness that hung in the air. During dessert, Kevin cleared his throat and stood up, glass in hand. The table fell silent. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," he began. "And I especially want to thank Hudson." All eyes turned to me. Many of you know that Hudson contributed a significant amount of money toward what was supposed to be my wedding. What you might not know is that he did this despite having serious concerns about my relationship, because he wanted to support me. And then when he was deliberately excluded from the guest list, he finally put his foot down. Kevin's voice grew thick with emotion. At the time, I was furious with him. I thought he was trying to ruin my happiness. What I didn't realize was that he was actually saving me from making the biggest mistake of my life. He raised his glass in my direction. "To my brother, who had the courage to do the hard thing when it would have been easier to just go along, I'm more grateful than I can ever express." The table erupted in applause, and I felt a weight lift from my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. The villain in the family narrative had finally been recast as the reluctant hero. Later that night, as Kevin and I sat on our mother's porch like we used to do as teenagers, he turned to me with newfound clarity in his eyes. "You know what's crazy? I'm actually happier now than I've been in 2 years. Freedom will do that," I replied, "even when it comes with pain." And as we sat there in comfortable silence watching the stars emerge in the night sky, I knew that though our relationship had been damaged, it hadn't been destroyed. In fact, in some ways it was stronger now, forged in the fire of a painful but necessary truth. 6 months after the wedding that never happened, Kevin and I established a new tradition: Thursday night dinners, just the two of us. Sometimes we'd try new restaurants, other times we'd grab takeout and watch a game at my place. The content of these evenings mattered less than their consistency, the steady rebuilding of trust between brothers. Kevin had thrown himself into therapy with the same intensity he once devoted to pleasing Jessica. "My therapist says I have classic people-pleaser tendencies stemming from our parents' divorce," he explained during one of our dinners. "Apparently I was so afraid of more abandonment that I became willing to sacrifice my own needs and relationships to keep someone from leaving me." "That makes sense," I acknowledged. "You were just a kid when Dad left and it hit you hard. The irony is that in trying to keep Jessica happy, I abandoned everyone who actually cared about me." Kevin shook his head ruefully, including myself. Watching my brother's self-awareness develop was both impressive and heartwarming. Week by week, I saw glimpses of the old Kevin re-emerging, but with new boundaries and insights. He started saying no to things he didn't want to do. He became more comfortable expressing disagreement. He recognized when he was falling into old patterns of trying to please others at his own expense. My relationship with Sophia had deepened through the ordeal as well. She had stood by me when much of my family was questioning my decision, offering unwavering support without simply telling me what I wanted to hear. 6 months after the wedding debacle, I found myself browsing engagement rings, contemplating a proposal that felt nothing like the performative spectacle Kevin and Jessica had planned. "Just promise me one thing," Sophia said when I broached the subject of marriage. "No country clubs, no 5-piece bands, and definitely no custom letterpress invitations with wax seals." I laughed. "How about we elope?" "Don't tempt me," she replied with a grin. Kevin had made good on his promise to repay me, sending whatever he could afford each month. I never pressured him about it, and honestly, the money had stopped mattering to me the moment we began repairing our relationship. Still, I recognized that the repayment was important to him, a tangible way of making amends. 3 months into his repayment plan, I suggested an alternative. "What if you took the money you're sending me each month and invested it in your photography business?" Instead, I proposed during one of our Thursday dinners. Kevin looked up from his pasta confused. "But I owe you. And you've acknowledged that, which means a lot to me. But I'd rather see you build something sustainable than watch you struggle to repay a debt that's in the past." Kevin was silent for a long moment. "That's incredibly generous, Hudson. But I need to make this right. Then how about this? Use the money to build your business, and when you're successful, pay it forward. Help someone else who needs it." After some consideration, Kevin agreed to a modified version of my proposal. He would use half the monthly amount to invest in his photography business and continue repaying me with the other half, albeit more slowly. With this new arrangement, Kevin was able to purchase better equipment and take workshops to refine his skills. He focused on architectural and landscape photography, rather than the wedding and society event photography Jessica had pushed him toward. His passion for the work was evident, and gradually he began building a portfolio that reflected his true artistic vision. 4 months after our agreement, Kevin secured his first major client, a regional magazine that wanted a photo series on historic buildings. The joy and pride on his face when he shared the news was worth more than any repayment could ever be. "This never would have happened if I was still with Jessica," he admitted. "She thought architectural photography was boring. She wanted me shooting socialites and charity galas." "Because that was her world," I pointed out. "And she wanted to mold you to fit into it." Kevin nodded thoughtfully. "I can see now how I was losing myself in her vision. Her idea of success meant abandoning what actually made me happy." Our family dynamics had shifted as well. Initially, some relatives had been hesitant to take sides in what they perceived as a rift between brothers. But as the truth about Jessica's manipulation became clearer, most came to understand my actions and Kevin's subsequent awakening. 5 months after the canceled wedding, our extended family gathered for our cousin's birthday. It was the first large family event since the wedding drama, and there was a subtle tension in the air when Kevin and I arrived together. Our Uncle Thomas, who had been particularly critical of my decision to withdraw wedding funding, approached me during the party. "I owe you an apology," he said gruffly. I spoke out of turn without knowing the full story. "It's water under the bridge," I assured him. "No, it needs to be said." He looked over at Kevin, who was showing our young cousins how to use his camera. "That Jessica woman would have destroyed him. You saw what none of us wanted to see." Similar conversations happened with other family members as time passed. Not everyone apologized explicitly, but the narrative gradually shifted from Hudson ruined Kevin's wedding to Hudson saved Kevin from a toxic relationship. 6 months to the day after what would have been the wedding, Kevin suggested we take a weekend trip to the mountains. He had recently started dating again very casually, but wanted this trip to be just the two of us. We rented a small cabin by a lake, hiking during the day and building campfires at night. On our second evening, as we sat beside the fire watching stars reflect on the water, Kevin broached the subject we had mostly avoided in our weekly dinners. "Do you think you'll ever fully forgive me?" he asked quietly. I poked at the fire with a stick, considering the question seriously. "I think I already have, but forgetting is harder than forgiving." "What do you mean?" "I forgive you for going along with Jessica's plan to exclude me. I understand how her manipulation worked and why you were vulnerable to it. But I can't forget how it felt to realize my own brother had chosen someone else's approval over our relationship." Kevin nodded slowly. "That's fair. I wouldn't forget that either. But here's the thing," I continued. "Forgiveness isn't a one-time decision. It's something I choose every day. And every day it gets a little easier because of how you've shown up since then." "I'm trying," Kevin said simply. "I know you are. That's why we're sitting here now." We fell into comfortable silence, the crackling fire and lapping water the only sounds. After a while, Kevin spoke again. "You know what I've learned from all this?" "What's that?" "That love shouldn't diminish you. Real love expands your world. It doesn't shrink it. Jessica wanted me smaller, more controllable. But you always wanted me to grow, even when it meant growing beyond needing your protection." I looked at my brother, struck by the wisdom in his words. "That's actually profound, Kev." He laughed. "Thanks. My therapist says I'm making progress." On our last night in the mountains, we stayed up late talking about everything and nothing like we used to do as teenagers. Childhood memories, our parents' divorce dreams for the future. The conversation flowed easily without the careful navigation around sensitive topics that had characterized our early reconciliation. "I should thank you," I said as our conversation winded down. Kevin looked puzzled. "For what?" "This whole experience taught me something important too. About boundaries, about standing up for myself, even with the people I love most." "I'm glad something good came from my massive error in judgment," Kevin said wryly. "Seriously though," I continued, "I've always been the responsible one, the one who fixes everything, who puts everyone else first. This situation forced me to prioritize my own self-respect. And that's changed how I approach all my relationships." Kevin nodded thoughtfully. "So we both grew from this disaster. Maybe that's the silver lining." When we returned to the city, our lives resumed their normal rhythms, but with a newfound appreciation for our brotherhood. Kevin's photography business continued to develop, with each success feeling like a victory we both shared. My relationship with Sophia deepened, and I found myself consulting Kevin about proposal ideas, valuing his creative input. Looking back on the wedding that never was, I sometimes marvel at how differently things turned out than anyone could have predicted. What began as a betrayal that threatened to permanently sever our relationship ultimately led to growth, authenticity, and a stronger bond between brothers. I learned that true love sometimes means saying no, that generosity without boundaries isn't really generosity at all, that standing firm in your self-worth isn't selfish, it's necessary. And Kevin learned that the right person expands your world rather than limiting it. That real support comes with honest feedback, not just blind agreement. That losing yourself to keep someone else is a price too high to pay. If you've ever faced a similar situation with family, where you had to make the difficult choice between keeping the peace and standing up for yourself, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Was there a time when setting boundaries actually strengthened your relationship in the long run? Hit the like button if you've ever had to make a tough decision that others didn't understand at first. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about family betrayal and the complicated path to reconciliation, and share this video with someone who might need to be reminded that sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the most necessary growth. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that even the deepest family wounds can heal with time, truth, and the courage to begin again.